Hello. Well, now I have to talk first.
I know.
This is my plan is finally coming together. All right. Hello. Thank you all very much for coming. Really, this is an awesome turnout. You guys look like cool people, although I guess we'll find out shortly during the So Allison and I both spent a lot of time in Haiti. I lived there for 3.5 years, from 2007 until 2011, which happened to include both that day and the day, 3 months before that picture was taken, when that happened to the National Palace, along with most of the other buildings in Haiti's capital and surrounding areas. And I was the associated press correspondent in Haiti at the time. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I moved to Haiti in February, so about a month and a half after the earthquake. Can you guys hear me? Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. About a month and a half after the earthquake, and I lived there for about 1.5 years as a freelancer doing news and feature assignments in my own projects. And so that's where this is going to come from today.
We were told with the microphones that we had to do our best Beyonce impressions, which I said impression. So we went back, thanks to the Pulitzer Center, also for putting this together. But thanks to the Pulitzer Center, we were able to go back in April of this year, so not very long ago, to do a report on the Clintons in Haiti, which is an extremely important topic from the Haitian perspective. It's a pretty important topic from the American perspective, and I think is only going to get more important as the election season rolls on. When I tell people that I did a story about the Clintons in Haiti, the first question that they usually ask me is, so how did they do? And I say, why didn't you read the story? I wrote it all down. But I also understand that people are pressed for time, and so people want a short answer, and the short answer is there is no short answer. The short answer of how things went in Haiti in terms of the reconstruction after the earthquake was not very well. There were some good things that were done. There were some very, very bad things that were done. But on the whole, the balance sheet is not good. Haiti and its people are not in a better position now than they were when the earthquake struck. The country remains extremely precarious, and life there remains extremely dangerous and difficult for the vast majority of people who live there. And that was not the goal. And the goal happened to be stated most succinctly by the gentleman with his hand up there. He didn't come tonight, right? I was hoping. Right? We put it out on Twitter. He used a phrase that he had actually imported from the earthquakes and tsunami in the Boxing Day tsunami in the Indian Ocean Basin in 2004, which was to build back better. Which the first time it was said was sort of a brilliant, or at least very intelligent sort of slogan. The idea was, we're not just going to build back. We're not just going to fix buildings like this one, which, by the way, is the National Palace. That was the office of the president. So essentially, you're looking at the Haitian White House in ruins. We're not just going to put things back the way they were. We're going to put them into a way that if another disaster were to strike, would go better. And categorically, that did not happen. And one of the interesting things about the Clintons, and I think one of the things that you'll see as we're talking here today, and then when we're having our conversation a little later, is that generally speaking, if you're doing a presentation about NGOs or maybe one aid group in particular, the story that was just written, a very good one by ProPublica and NPR about the Red Cross's foibles in Haiti after the earthquake. People can say, well, how did this NGO do? And they can say, well, I mean, you can judge us on our work, but the situation was so much more complex. And you get in a very difficult conversation where you say, well, all these NGOs are part of this incredible source of power that really runs things. Oh, sorry. These incredible sources of power that really run things in Haiti, which has been known for about 30 years as a republic of NGOs and non-governmental organizations. But maybe you can't blame each individual NGO for all of the problems that they have to face, right? It's not the Red Cross's fault that the United Nations brought cholera to Haiti and killed 9,000 people and sickened 700,000, right? You can't mix them both together. But if there's one guy or one man and one woman that you can sort of trace all these different things back to in some circuitous way, it happens to be Bill and Hillary Clinton. The reason for that is they were so powerful, they had so much responsibility. But of course, no two people, not even the Clintons, would have been able to do everything and to break the patterns that have been going on for so long and hurting so many people in Haiti. Nonetheless, if there's anybody that you could really tag that to, it's these guys. So we're gonna be rough tonight. So we're gonna show you a bunch of photos that Allison took, and we're going to talk about them. And that's how we'll tell the story tonight.
Mostly Jonathan's going to be talking.
So what else is new?
So one of the sort of features of that punctuated my time in Haiti was these sort of every couple of months visits by one or the other of the Clintons. And this particular one happened to be a meeting of the interim reconstruction committee, what do they call it? So on the right here, you see the Prime Minister, Bellarive, and you see Clinton. They were co-chairs of this committee. And, co-chairs of the committee, a relationship that was relatively uneasy for them at some time. And Jonathan will talk more.
Yeah, so this is one of those examples of just the incredible amounts of power that Bill and Hillary held in Haiti. So Bill Clinton, looking quite concerned there, was the co-chairman of the Interim Haiti Recovery Commission or Reconstruction Commission, depending on what day they printed the sign. That day it said Reconstruction. That was a very powerful job. The IHRC, as its initials go in English, was the commission that was supposed to be in charge of making sure that the recovery and the reconstruction went well, that things were allocated well, that projects went the way that they were supposed to, and he was the co-chairman of it. It was technically a Haitian government organization at a time when, for much of its existence, there was no Haitian parliament because it disbanded, because elections couldn't be held, because of the earthquake in part. The Supreme Court didn't exist because the Supreme Court had fallen down. And so basically you had a presidency of President René Preval, whose prime minister is Jean-Max Bellarive, who's standing there. You had the IHRC. So they were in charge of making sure that the reconstruction went well, and it didn't. That was one of his hats. Another hat at the time that the earthquake struck, Bill Clinton was the United Nations Special Envoy for Haiti. And another very important hat that he was wearing is that he was in charge of the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative, and then was tapped by President Obama along with George W. Bush, you saw in the previous picture there, to basically be in charge of helping allocate money for the U.S. response, and they called the program that they put together the Clinton-Bush Haiti Fund. So he had quite a lot to do. Hillary was, of course, the Secretary of State, an extremely important position in any circumstance, but she was also very personally involved and very hands-on. And her, I always want to say aide de camp, I think her chief of staff, Cheryl knows his position was actually personally tasked with being a liaison to the Haitian government, and she spent quite a lot of time there. So the Obama State Department, as run by Hillary Clinton, was very intimately involved in day-to-day management of things in Haiti, and very influential, as we'll see. So we'll kind of, and we're going to flip through some of these quickly. This is Bill, and well, anyway, this is Bill. That's Dennis O'Brien, is the other the other white guy in the middle there. The Irish billionaire and head of one of the major cell phone companies that operates in Haiti, and then they're reopening a project in this picture, the Iron Market. And you know who that is. And I think
this is that day here.
What's it?
So this is January 30th, 2011, which Jonathan will tell you is significant for several reasons.
Right. Okay, so remember that face. So the reason why that day was so important was because of what it meant for that guy in the middle who Bill has his hand on. That is Michel Martelly, who is now known as the president of the Republic of Haiti, but at the time that the election began, he was best known in Haiti as Sweet Mickey, a terrific pop star, a really good singer, a very funny and bawny guy who was into exposing himself on stage and humping drum sets and cussing and being lewd and terrific music. Seriously, you should check it out if you haven't. He actually had been basically the election was a mess. It went forward only about 10 months after the earthquake struck. The country was not ready to hold another election, but there was a lot of pressure from the international community to go ahead and do one. And part of that was sort of part of the general notion of the way that the United States and other powers in the international community look at Haiti, which is the big goal is always stability, which is sort of a word. I know a lot of you guys are journalists, and I know I learned in journalism school that one of the worst descriptors that you can use to describe, say, a patient who is in the hospital is stable, because it doesn't really tell you anything. I'm stable right now. Dead people are very stable. Like, being stable is not really an indicator of anything. It just means that things aren't changing. And in a country where people want to have a lot of change, the fact that stability is often the goal in Haiti, for instance, of the United Nations stabilization mission in Haiti, MINUSTA, the UN mission that's there. Of course, they haven't always been a force for stability, as the cholera example shows. But the idea that stabilization was the important thing, that we need these totems of democracy to continue moving forward. We need to have an election as soon as possible. It needs to happen on schedule. That was very much on the international community's minds. When the election actually happened, it was a total mess. All of the candidates, except for one, including this guy, Jean Bertrand Aristide, wanted the voting canceled as of about midday, on allegations that there was massive fraud that was supposed to put the chosen successor of the then president in power. And there was just, I don't like the word chaos in Haiti, but that day was very chaotic. There was a lot of turmoil going on. The election wasn't going off well. When the votes were actually counted up, the president's chosen successor, a guy named Jude Celestin, and a woman named Yolande Maïga, who was a former first lady of Haiti, were supposed to go on into the next round. Out of the 19 candidates, they were the top two who would face each other in a runoff. And there were riots in the streets, a lot of those promulgated by supporters of Sweet Mickey. The United States had differing views, probably within the United States government, about what kind of a leader Michel Martelly would be. But there were a couple things that were very clear. One of which was that he had a lot of popularity because he was a pop singer. Another was that he was going to be somebody who supported foreign investment projects. And he was also going to kind of be a law and order candidate, which you could tell because he was pretty far to the right in his historical political leanings. He had been friends with people from the regime of the former dictator, Jean-Claude Duvalier. And there were a number of people who thought that perhaps he would be the best guy to go forward. There was a lot of discontent in the US government with the then president of Haiti, René Preval. They felt that Reconstruction hadn't gone well because it hadn't, and they felt that that was all his fault, which it wasn't, although certainly some of it was. And so they were very happy to see him and his party gone. And so what happened was, in January of 2011, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, right in the middle of some of the tensest days in Tahrir Square in Cairo and the Arab Spring, flew down personally to Haiti to meet with the different candidates and make sure that he was put back into the race and that the president's chosen successor was taken out. She doesn't go down and do that. Michel Martelly doesn't become the president of Haiti. This is a great picture that Allison took of demonstrators waiting for the secretary at the airport that day. I think it's particularly funny because in Hard Choices, Hillary's memoir, she has like a glossy photo section in the middle, and one of the photos that she has is of those same two guys. Is another shot that Allison took, and the caption reads something like, all they wanted was a fair election process, and they had been through so much and they deserved it, and that was what I was there to give them. But these signs, as you can probably gather, these are directed at Hillary Clinton. The sham election that these two, I'm not saying they speak for everybody, but the sham election that these two protesters are describing was Hillary Clinton's participation coming in to reformulate who the top candidates were going to be. What they were saying, and if you look, you can see in some of the other pictures that Allison took, other signs, they're calling for new elections. They're saying this vote was fraudulent. this isn't the vote that we want. You can't recount a bad vote. Please do it over again. Hillary Clinton was there to make sure that they didn't do it over again, that more money wouldn't have to be spent on a new election. And essentially that Michel Martelly would at least get a coin flip chance of becoming the next president of Haiti. And of course, that's what it ended up. So, okay. So, as I said, one of the reasons why Michel Martelly was an attractive candidate to the State Department was because he was going to be supportive of foreign investment plans. And that's very much the Clinton view of Haiti. It's very much a Clinton view of the world. Bill often sums it up in one of his favorite phrases, public-private partnerships. But the idea is that, you know, through business, through foreign investments, through things that are sort of recognizable to us as the way that economies ought to operate, that's the way to move countries out of poverty. That's the way to build back better. And so the dominant US focus of the reconstruction effort has been this place. This is a place called Caracol. It's an industrial park in the north of Haiti. Industrial park is sort of a fancy word for essentially what is a collection of low-wage garment factories. And also a couple other businesses, including the one that makes these, which I just think are cool if you guys are Haiti fans. The 18th of May is Flag Day. That's why that date is on there.
Actually, I think it's really symbolic that they're dusty, too, just because I think it really symbolizes that this park was this great sort of dream. It was touted as this way to move Haiti forward. We're going to create all these jobs, and it is just a fraction full at this point. And so when we went through, they were trying to steer us to parts of the industrial park that had businesses going. And inadvertently, we'd come across things, like this particular warehouse where, like, oh yeah, the machine's broken today. It'll be working tomorrow. And you're walking by these like dusty bins of things that haven't been touched in months, and knowing that it's not going to be working tomorrow. So I thought that was particularly.
This is a kiosk where people can go to inquire about getting jobs in the park. The number of jobs that have been created in the park is far, far less than was originally thought would be possible. Bill Clinton, when he was boosting for this idea, was talking about somewhere between 60,000 and 100,000 jobs. And at this point, it's still in the single thousands. I think that the last numbers that were in our story were somewhere on the order of about 5,000. That in itself isn't even necessarily a measure of the success or failure of the park. In short, and we can talk more about it in the Q&A, that the entire concept of, I think we can keep scrolling. The entire concept of, this is another one of the factories. But the entire concept of building the Haitian economy through these very low-wage jobs is sort of faulty. And one of the reasons we know it's faulty is that it's been tried before and it didn't work. There was a huge push to have low-wage assembly factories and garment factories be the primary mode of the Haitian economy in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. And what it essentially created was wealth for the foreign companies that were doing work in Haiti, who had these factories in Haiti, didn't have to pay taxes, were guaranteed not to have union workforces, things like that. But very little in Haiti itself, because people didn't make enough money to really make a long-term difference in terms of the wealth of their lives. And when those factories closed because of instability and moved to other countries, there was nothing there for the people. So the biggest legacies of those factories, which in the first iteration of this were based in Port-au-Prince itself, were some of the largest slums in Port-au-Prince, including a place that some of you probably heard of called Cité Soleil, which was built originally as a workers' community for these garment factories. And there's a lot of fear that Caracol could end up producing the same thing. Sort of at best, it creates a lot of jobs that people come there to work, that they might start living around the area, and then we might see a recreation of that. This, by the way, is on the north coast of Haiti. This is about 90 miles away from Port-au-Prince and the quake zone. And so it's gotten criticism from some people specifically because it was outside the quake zone, because so much of the money, I think we're up to almost $300 million in terms of US government funds that have been spent on building this place. They paved the roads, they built a power plant. If you've never been to Haiti, this is not what most of Haiti looks like. These roads and curbs and sidewalks and things like that are extremely atypical. This is one of the only places in Haiti where you would see this. One of the only other ones I could think of is this sort of prefab neighborhood that's been built for U.S. Embassy staff to live in across the street from the U.S. Embassy, which looks like it should be in Miami. So yeah, so it's gotten some criticism for being outside of the quake zone. There is a response to that, which is that part of the problem that made the earthquake so deadly is that it was important to decentralize and get people out of the capital, where about a third of the country's population was living at the time that the earthquake struck. But we still haven't really moved on from the kinds of thinking that created that kind of central pole in the first place. So basically now we're at a point where it's like, well, maybe we'll have two poles. We'll have this northern corridor up here near Cape Haitian, which is the second largest city in the country, and we'll have the original pole in Port-au-Prince. So one of the ways that you can tell, tell what the result on this. Let's just look at this.
And let me just say, actually, something of note about Caracol that I found was interesting and spoke a lot to, sort of what Jonathan was saying about perhaps this maybe being the next City Soleil is, we were allowed into this very short guided tour, as I mentioned, and then, the anchor tenant, the people who were hiring, like 85% of the workforce there, was a Korean company called Seya. And, they let us go in, and they basically, as we reached the door, they said, we'll let you in, you can walk around, we're happy to show you inside, but no pictures. And, this is why you're seeing so many outside pictures of this particular company, because we quickly learned as we went inside, it's exactly what you're seeing, and you might imagine in a lot of other places in the world, with thousands of people lined up in a very tight line doing work in sweltering conditions, with numbered signs above them that count down as they do each piece, and they've got their target number blinking above them. So we got the tour of that, and made me realize why they did not want pictures inside. But I think this speaks very much to the future of what people are thinking about for Haiti.
So one of the ironies of Caracol is that it was built. These are dorms for the management. The middle management comes in from Central America, from pre-existing garment factories that were already there, and the senior management is almost all Korean, with Seya, who's still basically the only significant tenant, although there are a number of other tenants in the park. But one of the ironies, I know is in one of these next photos at some point, is that this park was built on extremely fertile land in northern Haiti, fertile farmland in a country that doesn't have a whole lot of fertile farmland. Used to be an extremely fertile place. The colony that became the Republic of Haiti, colony of Saint-Domingue, at its height, thanks to slavery and brutalization of the workforce that was kidnapped and brought there to work, it was at one point producing something on the order of like 2/3 of the sugar and 3/4 of the coffee that was consumed in Europe at the time. So this is a very fertile country, but it's been through a lot since, and because of deforestation, because of overuse of the land, there is a dearth of fertile farmland, and some of the fertile farmland that is still left in the country was chosen for this site, in part because it had a river that could be used industrially in the construction of factories. And some of the people that we talked to when we went down there for the story were a guy, Milestin Castin, who you see right there, and a number of other peasant farmers from northern Haiti who felt that their land had been taken from them and that they hadn't been fairly compensated for it. It's more complicated than that, but that's a good, quick, dirty overview of what happened there. The thing that you have to keep in mind in the next picture here is going to be of one of the farmers who lost but most of his land. He had a small other plot that he was here farming when we went to visit him. I know you all are like, I came here to hear about Bill and Hillary Clinton. Why are you talking about this industrial park? I know you're all here thinking, I came here to hear about Bill and Hillary Clinton. Why are you talking about this industrial park? But it is impossible to and believe me, the Clinton's people asked me the same question when they were reading our story afterward. But you can't overstate the influence and the role that both of them, both Bill and Hillary Clinton, played in the construction of this park, and in the centering of this park in the reconstruction project that took place after the earthquake. Even before the earthquake struck, when Bill Clinton was named UN Special Envoy for Haiti in the wake of a series of hurricanes that had struck the country in late 2008, the primary thing that he had come to do was economic revitalization through garment factories. That was really the number one thing. It was a report that was written by Paul Collier at the behest of UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to lay out an economic future for Haiti. And the future that he laid out had garment factories at its center. That was described in the book that I wrote on the earthquake and responses way. It was the gospel that Bill Clinton had come to spread. He was instrumental in making sure that this was going to be the focus, and Hillary, as Secretary of State, was instrumental, and Cheryl Mills, her chief of staff, were instrumental in actually putting together the agreements that made it possible for this park to be constructed. This is one of the other big things that is going on in northern Haiti right now, which is mining. The big story in this town in the months before we went down was the story that Tony Rodham, Hillary's brother, was found in Clinton's cash to have been on the board of one of the companies that got a mining concession in northern Haiti, looking for gold. There's a large gold mine in the Dominican Republic called Pueblo Viejo. There's presumably some gold under the soil in Haiti, although nobody knows exactly how much. And so at the time that we were doing reporting on this, there were a lot of people who assumed Mombasa is the primary concession that is suspected to be one of the places where this company called VCS Mining, that Tony Rodham was working as a consultant, was going to be able to pull all of this wealth out of the ground. And so, we were there and we were trying to figure out this question that a lot of people are wondering, which is like, why the heck are Bill and Hillary Clinton so interested in this place? And one of the answers that a lot of people assume, especially those of the Republican persuasion around here, is that they must be making money out of it. They must be personally benefiting from the wealth. And a lot of people thought that this connection, this Tony Rodham connection to this gold mine of Mombasa, would be the smoking gun. This would be the evidence that they were double dealing and that they were actually lining their own pockets. We didn't find anything like that. Not only did we not find anything like that at VCS, first of all, this is the mine. I don't know how much gold you can get out of that PVC pipe. He had a really long, he had like one of those like toilet plunger like this, and you could probably pull out a little bit. There's not much mining activity going on right now, in part because the investors aren't coming together thinking that it's going to be possible to pull enough out of the ground to justify the enormous expense that it's going to take to remove it. If it ever actually does get removed, it's going to ruin the view here. This is just spectacular country up in northern Haiti. And somewhere off in the background, I think you can see it, although it's very, very small. At the top of one of those mountains is the Citadel La Ferrier, which if you ever get a chance to go to Haiti, it's right there. You can't see it there, but it's this tremendous fortress, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that's on top of a 3,000-foot mountain that was constructed in the early days of Haiti's independence to defend against a possible re-invasion by the French, who they had already defeated in war. They were afraid we're going to come back and try to finish the deal militarily. They didn't. They did it economically instead. But if this blows up into an open pit mine, it's really going to ruin the view here. But if people can make money out of it, I'm sure somebody will try. Nonetheless, again, there's just no evidence that, first of all, anybody's going to get rich off of this thing. Second of all, that Tony Rodham or anybody else on the board of VCS Mining in particular is going to get rich out of this thing. There also isn't even evidence that Tony Rodham's presence on the board is what made it possible for them to get the concession. From everything that we can tell, he wasn't appointed a consultant until after the concession was already received. So nobody knows exactly why Tony Rodham did that, but I'm sure that's a question that Hillary is asking herself as well. In terms of the question of housing and what is going to happen up here in this northern corridor, if all these things, if this mining, if the garment factory focus actually do result in some kind of an economic boom, is again whether we're going to see the construction of another huge slum, tin shacks in a place like City Soleil. So to help try to forestall this, USAID has built their own housing development, which ended up being called Village La Différence. It originally had another name. They were joking while we were up there that one of the guys who was helping us go around and do some reporting up there asked one of the residents if she was paying more for her house now than she had been previously, and she said yes, and he said, well, that's the difference. He was a funny guy. So this is another view here. Again, this is, it's sort of a mixed bag, this development. The residents who live there, some of them actually had lost houses in the quake zone and had moved, in most cases, back up to northern Haiti and had taken houses here. Other people had lived here in the neighborhood. There were a variety of points of view about, you know, the quality of the houses. People were complaining about some substandard materials being used. I think it was 2 contractors were censured and fired from USAID for constructing these houses using things, among other things, substandard concrete, which is just like, man, that's the worst. I mean, the substandard concrete is what killed 316,000 people in the earthquake. So if there's one mistake not to repeat, it's that. But, you know, some people were happy to be in these homes and to be in this neighborhood. And one of the best features of this thing, and also one of the things that sort of sums up the complexity of the Clintons' legacy in Haiti, is the school that is here in the middle of Village de France. And there it is. It is it's a privately funded school that is funded by SEA, the South Korean anchor tenant, the main garment company that is working in Caracol Park. By the way, you've never heard of SEA before, but I would bet you that at least, I don't know, probably 1 in 10 people in this room have something that SEA probably made in one of their factories in the world. If you've ever shopped at Target, if you've ever shopped at Kohl's, if you've ever shopped at Walmart, if you've ever shopped at Old Navy, you probably put on something that was made in one of these factories that may have been touched by the hands of some of the people that you're seeing in this picture. And the reason why your clothes are so cheap, the reason why you can get so many Old Navy clothes and throw them out when they aren't the right style anymore, or when they get a little faded, is because the people who are working in these factories aren't making very much money to make them. That's just a fact of life. But the kids of some of the people in the factories and the kids of some of the people in Village de France are going to this school, which SEA, that company, is funding. And that's a great picture. And there are a lot of great things that are going on at this school. One of the things that you would take for granted if you hadn't spent a lot of time in Haitian schools, and I don't know why you necessarily would, is that this is written in the language of Creole, which happens to be the language that the vast majority of people in Haiti speak exclusively. French, even though that's one of the root languages of Creole, is not a widely spoken language in Haiti. If any of you have gone to work in Haiti speaking only French, you probably found this out the hard way. But most schools in Haiti teach in French. So the fact that this school, whose principal was taken out of the New York City public school system in the Bronx to come down here and head this up, and has very high-level teachers, and he's recruited some of the best teachers in Haiti. A huge number of them have advanced degrees in teaching in a country where the majority of teachers haven't completed 9th grade education. And they've developed this Creole curriculum, which is incredible. I mean, this is fantastic. Like if you're a Haiti geek and you've been spending a lot of time looking at education in Haiti, the fact that somebody came up with this Creole education is fantastic. It's phenomenal. The thing about this school, which provides nutrition, and you can see up there, that's a sign with a message from, handwritten message from Bill and Hillary Clinton that have been recreated on the metal plaque, which are all over the school. Those messages are in English, so I'm not sure who's supposed to read them. I guess us, which we did, and now we're here telling you about them, so I guess it worked. The school has, you know, this is a well-built building, it's providing food, the curriculum seems really good. Like, it seemed like a really solid, awesome school. The one thing, ironically, that SEA was not providing were the uniforms, because the school uniforms are obviously being worn by people in Haiti, and SEA produces entirely for export. So that was ironic. But it's providing this wonderful education in this wonderful place. But it's a one-off. It's almost impossible to scale this up into some kind of a national school system. And this is one of the things that makes it really difficult when you're talking. These are the basketball goals that were donated by the Brooklyn Nets. This is another like sort of classic Clinton thing, right? It's like they just have like a lot of cool stuff. Like if you're sitting in a room in Washington, just like, it looks cool. Yeah, Jason Kidd has his name on a backboard here in Village de France, and like the Brooklyn Nets donated the hoops, and that's awesome. And there's a Creole language education. It's like all the hip, cool, like awesome new stuff has like been brought together into this one school. And I don't want to call it like a Potemkin school, but like it kind of is. I mean, it's like it's you can't. the way that this has been brought about, the way that this school is being funded by a single company that's there for who knows how long, maybe say I'll be there for 50 years, maybe they'll be there for 5 years and decide to move on, the way that they did from one of their factories in Guatemala that they closed at the same time that this one, that the factories in Haiti were opening. But they're just sort of there funding this school individually. And that's the Clinton model, right? It's the model that you see highlighted in the Clinton Global Initiative is that these public-private partnerships, you bring together public money from the State Department to help build these houses that you see behind it, because those are funded by USAID, and then you have private money from the company, and it all comes together and creates this great thing, but it's very difficult to imagine how this would be scalable to any kind of national scale. And so, no, that's perfect. So this is one of the evidences of that. This is another school that was financed by the Clinton Foundation. Now, when we went down, I got in touch with my friends at the Clinton Foundation. None of them I see here directly, but maybe they're watching them. Hey guys. I asked them. I was like, "Look, we're going to do this thing. We'd like to talk to some of your people." They gave us a list, and we talked to a lot of the people who were implementing projects that they wanted us to talk to. This school was not on the list, which got our attention. This is in Port-au-Prince. It's a school called the Cholera Clinic de Argentina, the Republic of Argentina school. It was a school that was basically destroyed in the earthquake. And the money to rebuild this school, again, another public-private partnership, was provided by Boeing. It was about $900,000 that the Boeing company gave, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to build a school. So this is how the Clinton network works, right? It's like you saw Clinton up there rubbing shoulders, literally, in a lot of those cases, with Haitian politicians, with Dennis O'Brien, with Prime Minister Bellerive. And then, they're also friends with these corporations, and they kind of all bring them together, and they mix them all up, and they introduce them to one another, and they match make. And they say, Boeing's got $900,000. They want to rebuild the school. The Republic de Argentine school needs to be rebuilt. We have an NGO that can implement it called Architecture for Humanity, which ceased to exist very shortly after this project began. And we can kind of put them all together, and they can create this thing. But this school is a hovel compared to what was going on up in Village La Différence. Despite the fact that it costs so much. So you can see these are UNICEF desks that have been donated. The school itself seems to be fairly well built, but there's no electricity in it. There's no computer lab in it. They construct it in a very intelligent way that keeps the rooms cooler. You can see like the way that the windows constructed. There's other cool things that they did to like literally cool the building to keep the temperature down. But basically this school it's functioning at the level that most Haitian schools are functioning, which is not very well. It has a better building, which is good. It seems to be well built. Hopefully it's not going to collapse in the earthquake. We were sort of looking for $900,000 worth of stuff in it, and we couldn't quite find it, but the implementing NGO who built it said, yeah, that sounds about right. That's probably about what it spent when you had to factor in the subcontractors and the overruns that we ran into. So again, another opportunity where some of you are coming and looking for like the moment that the Clintons stole the money and they put it in their pocket. Doesn't seem to be it. But nonetheless is an example of why it's so hard to take this model and to scale it up in a way that's really going to be transformative. This is a cholera clinic. Again, the ironies of Haiti, a disease that is imported by the United Nations. Bill Clinton, in classic Bill Clinton style, was one of the first, although it took about, I think, a year and a half, 2 years of the public officials to actually come out and say, yes, obviously the evidence shows that this disease was brought to Haiti by United Nations peacekeepers, which was significant because he was carrying a United Nations portfolio. This clinic was built by a group called Mass Design. It's on the campus of a really good clinic in Port-au-Prince called Guesquio, which is one of the oldest AIDS clinics in the world. Its name reflects that because it's a very long name that involves Kaposi sarcoma and other opportunistic infections, because it was built at a time when the word AIDS didn't exist. One of the interesting things about, and this, it looks like it's going to be a well-made building, and it looks like it could be an effective cholera clinic, but again, I don't know how scalable. This was one of the other things that we ran into in the story, was how hard it was to try to figure out exactly what the Clintons did, like what the role of the Clintons was in any given thing. When the story came out, it wasn't in the story itself, it was in a photo caption, but we mentioned the fact that Guesquio, that larger clinic that this small cholera clinic has been placed on the property of, was built, operates in part on Clinton Foundation money, and we received money from the Clinton Foundation. And the people from Mass Design were extremely unhappy with this. For reasons that I'm still not entirely clear, and the end of the conversation was that we realized that it was an error. They had not received, that SKO had not received money from the Clinton Foundation, they had received money from the Clinton-Bush Haiti Fund. So we corrected that. Nonetheless, it's another example of how difficult it is, because in some cases, the amounts of money that are actually flowing through the Clinton Foundation or Clinton entities are actually rather small. Maybe they're symbolic. Maybe what they actually did was they match made, they put people together with the CGI or something like that. Maybe the Clintons are taking more credit for it than the other implementing partners want them to, unless everything goes wrong, like sort of at the Rebranding the Model, and then you don't have people talking about it afterward. It can be very, very difficult. The one thing that you can say, and this is how former Prime Minister Bellerive put it, is that you see, when it's going on, you don't realize it. But then afterward, when you're looking back, you see there were Clintons in everywhere. That's how he put it. He said, even if they were smart enough to make you think it was your own idea. That because of the various ways in which Clinton influence is felt there, because of their ways through the private sector, my friends in the private sector, Hillary's role as Secretary of State in the government, Bill's role as a former president, his role on the IHRC, his role as UN Special Envoy, and on down the line, it can be very difficult to actually pin down what exactly it is that they did. And that can serve them well. I think actually, ironically, at least over the last couple months of the campaign here in the United States, has actually been damaging to Hillary, because they can kind of get hit with anything. Because since they had spent so long sort of taking vague credit or putting their imprimatur on things in a very light way around the side, all of those things that they had lightly put their imprimatur on, all of a sudden were brought back to try to screw them by their enemies. And we'll see how that turns out. I mean, it could go both ways for them. Historically, it's gone pretty well, although. And then finally here, these are pictures of one of the housing projects in Haiti. This was a housing expo that Bill Clinton also helped kick off, in which different models of homes, different companies were invited to construct homes in different ways. They were going to try to pick one and use that as a model that they would then recreate all over the country to give people safer places to live and rebuild housing and house the homeless population that had been created by the earthquake. That never happened. And the Housing Expo sort of stands there as a monument to futility. It's in an area called Zone near Cité Soleil, on the outskirts of Port-au-Prince. And we went around these homes, and they're just sort of, it's this fantastic museum of decay that's kind of falling down everywhere around you. But people live in all of these, because this is Haiti. There's demand. Like, people need housing. And so people are willing to live in these houses, including one that was completely full of bees. Was it this house here? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, it was. This house is completely full of bees. And the guy who lived in it, I mean, this is like a joke that like Zeta would have told you. He was sitting there like next to a tree. That's grandfather English, by the way. He was sitting next to a tree next to his house, and he said, yeah, it's full of bees and they sting you all the time and you can't be in there during the day. But at least we get free honey. And he wasn't kidding. They get free honey out of the walls of their house. So there are a couple more of these pictures here. So we'll flip through these, and I think, you know, that's a Kentucky Derby T-shirt, by the way. I think that one of I think that one of the symbols that comes out of this is that, again, that idea that Bill Clinton was selling and really sold a lot of people on, that Haiti was going to be built back better. Part of the idea was that it was going to do things like give people safe and secure housing. It was going to be different from the way that housing was before the earthquake. And these houses, this house had to be fixed up with tarps, better known, if any of you guys work for NGOs, as shelter solutions. That's really what they're called. By the way, that's one of the reasons why people were so confused about why the Red Cross had only built 6 houses, was because they've been telling people they've been giving people shelter, but what they meant were shelter solutions. That's a shelter solution hanging there from the ceiling. But, you know, so this promise of putting people in a better life, of investing in them from the outside and reconstructing their lives in this way that was going to be better and safer and healthier and have multiplicative benefits, never came to pass. And so even though you don't see as many people living, for instance, in the post-quake camps as you did in the years immediately following the earthquake, most people have moved into houses that are the same as the houses that existed before the earthquake. And if another earthquake were to strike tomorrow, we would see the same result that happened on January 12th, 2010. And so I think we're going to leave it there. And I know this has been sort of peripatetic, but hopefully your questions will focus us more on specific things that you guys would be interested in. So Shai.
Yep, we'll pass one mic, and Allison and Jonathan will share another. We have about 10 minutes of official time, but then you're free to mingle afterwards. So go ahead and kick it off.
Hi, about, I think it was about 4 years ago, Rolling Stone did an article about Clinton's foundation in Haiti, which was breathtakingly horrifying. And among the charges was that basically the Clinton Foundation, or one of the entities, was arm twisting foreign governments and any money that was coming in to channel it through their foundation. They wanted the credit for it. They wanted to be in charge of everything. And I'm wondering if that's a problem that's been resolved, or if you came upon it.
And if you could repeat the parameters of the question.
The question, I think you're referring to Janet Raymond's piece in Rolling Stone a couple of years ago. The idea was that the Clinton Foundation was arm twisting people to specifically move money through their foundation. I'm not sure that that's true. I mean, if you look at the amount of money that was actually spent through the Clinton Foundation, it's relatively low compared to the enormous amounts of money that were floating around in general. It's possible that what she was describing there was pressure to move money from governments through the Interim Haiti Recovery Commission. But again, this is a perfect example of the situation that you get into when you sort of go on the trail of Hillary and Bill, which is that like it can be very easy to mix them up, or it can be very easy to you see all this money and you see all this pressure, and it can be hard to keep track of where it's even going because they're wearing so many different hats, because they're in charge of so many different things. So yeah, it would have been a good idea actually for governments to move their money through the Interim Haiti Recovery Commission. That was the idea of it. It was based on a prior commission that had existed in Bande Aceh after the 2004 tsunami there. And that had worked as sort of a parallel structure that was part of the Indonesian government that would oversee money directly so that foreign governments didn't have to worry about giving their money to the Indonesian government itself. But there were a lot of differences between the IHRC and the BRR, which is the commission that was working in Aceh. And one of them was that on the IHRC, foreigners held the power. They always had parity or a majority. The co-chair in Bande Aceh, the head was a man by the name of Pak Kuntoro. He was a very well-respected Indonesian official. In Haiti, the co-chair was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, again, not Haitian. We didn't even mention the Clintons going down on one of their first post-honeymoon trips in 1975, so they feel a lot of close, they have a lot of affection for the country, but they're not Haitian. And so, you find yourself in a situation there where you still, even though moving money through the IHRC would have been better than the kind of hodgepodge bilateral relations that you saw actually taking place, that you see after most disasters, including, by the way, right now in Nepal. But because of the way that the IHRC was structured with Bill Clinton as the co-chair, it still wouldn't have been an ideal situation, and in case they weren't able to follow up.
There you go. And just hold it up.
So this is just a kind of naive question. It sounds like you're basically saying that there were grand plans that didn't come through well. But what I don't know is whether there's a better example. You're talking now about like Indonesia. What was supposed to happen that didn't happen, and did it happen elsewhere? Were there other cases of redevelopment that actually worked splendidly?
So that's a really good question. If there's a better example somewhere else, or if it always happens like this. And the short way that I would put it is that a lot of the problems that we're talking about, a lot of the problems that you read about when you read or hear about the reconstruction or aid in general not going well in Haiti, are emblematic of problems that exist in the wider aid world. This is no secret to people who work in the aid industry. People know that it works this way. Our friend Emily Troutman just wrote a piece from Nepal, basically about the same thing happening now in Nepal after the earthquake, although obviously it's in the early going there still. So there isn't really, there are places that you can point to and you can say that there are certain things that have gone better, and you can throw in. But broadly speaking, I would say no, not really. And one of the issues is the way that we conceive of aid, of the humanitarian aid industry and what that aid industry is supposed to do. And I think one of the very short things to say about it is that we make a mistake when we divide this sort of idea of humanitarianism from these ideas of larger policy. And this is something the Clintons know about. So you have an example of like Bill Clinton talking about in early 2010, the fact that US agricultural policy, which dumped heavily subsidized US grain and other foods into Haiti at low prices, drove Haitian farmers out of business, helped destroy the country's food security, helped create overcrowding in Port-au-Prince, helped make the earthquake so deadly. Part of what he was trying to do there was he was trying to signal that it was going to be different this time. You know, I know what happened, and it's going to, like, the next time is going to, this time is going to go differently. But the truth of the matter is that it didn't. And I think one of the most interesting places to look at it, frankly, is in the persons of the Clintons themselves, because they are the literal marriage and personification in themselves of these combinations of philanthropy and governance, of public policy and of private action. And there are these nexuses in which all of these things come together, and those things, long before they came along, completely separate from them as well, have been a failure in most of the world. And the sad truth is that their attempt to basically rebrand that model in their own name and do these old things that have been done for so long again, but say that it was going to be different this time because it's them who's doing it, ended up really being essentially an abject failure. Do you have anything? Okay.
Here you go.
Hi, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the global health aspect of this. I was wondering, like, if the global health initiatives done by the Clinton, I guess, like, group, was that much of a mixed bag as some of the economic development or schools or something like that, or was it more effective, less effective? I don't know if there's any, like with the Clinton Health Access Initiative and stuff like that, were they any more effective or kind of just as much?
Look, there are individual projects that the Clintons put their name on or helped fund or helped create that did good. Clinton partnerships with, Clintons are obviously partners with Partners in Health. Clinton named as his deputy UN Special Envoy Paul Farmer, which was just, man, such a great classic Clinton move. Because if any of you guys were paying attention to Haiti in the 90s, there was no bigger critic of Bill Clinton in Haiti than Paul Farmer. And so he co-opted him and he brought him into the fold, and they seem to be a relatively happy family together. So they did do a lot of work with Partners in Health, and Partners in Health has done a lot of good work. But the larger picture has been extremely problematic. Again, when you're talking about public health in Haiti, like, you gotta go back to the cholera epidemic. When you're talking about what healthcare in Haiti was like after the earthquake, the express goal that the responders had, and Bill Clinton was one of the people voicing this, and Hillary as well, after the earthquake, was to avoid a follow-on epidemic, which people often imagine is going to happen after a disaster. By the way, they don't. They don't happen. They happen so infrequently that it's almost random. It's very hard to draw any kind of causal link, especially between a geophysical disaster like an earthquake and any kind of contagious disease breaking out afterward. We're seeing the same thing in Nepal, or better said, not seeing it in Nepal right now. And the same way in Haiti, a lot of that focus on stopping disease outbreaks was somewhat misbegotten, But at the very least, we didn't see a disease outbreak for the 9 months after the earthquake until UN soldiers brought cholera, a disease that had never been seen before in Haiti, a strain that we know for absolute certain had never existed before in Haiti, to Haiti, and has now killed 9,000 people. And the Clintons and some of their partners and other things that they've touched have been involved with helping deal with the cholera outbreak. But every time you read a story about somebody and they talk about the work that they did in Haiti, and they say some of the great work that we did was managing, or helping treat this cholera outbreak, remember where it came from. And remember the fact that when it broke out, all of these major players tried to cover it up. And they all assisted the United Nations in obscuring what the source of the epidemic was. And in those crucial first couple of weeks, when the Artibonite River was the only vector of cholera in Haiti, and the UN probably knew that because they knew where their base was, and they knew that their base was probably the source. It was a base that was on the Artibonite River system. They knew that that base was probably the source of cholera in Haiti. They didn't say anything. And so it's very hard to, when you're actually sort of writing out final report cards, and I hate report cards, I've always had my mother's here, she didn't tell you. But when you sort of write out the final report card, it's like, all right, big marks for everybody for sort of having helped contain this thing, but negative points to everybody for having caused it in the first place.
We have a question in the back, so why don't you come up front? You'll be our last one for the evening.
You wait for a long time, then you should go.
Well, we'll have two then.
Okay.
Come on.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Jonathan. Have you seen anything good that the Clintons have done in Haiti?
It's again, I mean, the thing is that I see our role in going down there as journalists and trying to explain what the situation is, to give people a global overview of what's been going on. Because we have to look at this at a systemic level. And especially when you talk about the Clintons, I mean, specifically, what has Bill Clinton done specifically himself with his own hands? Nothing. Because Bill Clinton's not a doctor, although he sometimes talks like one. He doesn't, Hillary isn't a construction worker. I mean, what they do is they create policy, they implement policy, they raise money, they put people together. And there are things that you can touch. I mean, when you go to Haiti, like there is now a Marriott hotel in Port-au-Prince. That Marriott hotel is there because Dennis O'Brien built it, and Dennis O'Brien built it because Bill Clinton introduced Dennis O'Brien to the CEO of Marriott and said, according to Dennis O'Brien, why don't you build a Marriott in Port-au-Prince? So it's there. I mean, it's something you can go and you can touch. But I just don't think that you can talk about. And so, yes, I mean, there are projects. There's they fund a fish farm. They've helped build they have like a peanut planting project. They have different things that they've done with different degrees of success. Bill Clinton made a match between mango growers and the Coca-Cola company to create a flavor called, Haiti mango limeade something. I don't know. Nobody drank it, so you don't know what. So that didn't work. A lot of the big mango projects haven't worked, although they do have a processing plant that I think has gone well. And so yes, I mean, you can go and you can point to things and you can say, this is something the Clintons put their name on and it is doing a thing. But if you can't talk about the overall picture and you can't talk about actually holding people responsible for not having set clear goals and then failing to live up to them, and when they don't live up to them, not being held accountable, you can't talk about that when you talk about the Clintons. Like, who can you talk about that? And so, I think it's very important to keep in mind that these aren't all villains. Again, we found no evidence when we went down there. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it means we didn't find it, and we were looking because it would have been a great story, and everybody would have clicked on it, they would have shared it, of just like outright theft, of just like Hillary with like a bag over her shoulder full of like Haitian food, like running for the Dominican border, like we did, or Tony Rodham doing it, like, Hillary, I'm coming, I've got the goods. Actually, kind of makes sense. Like we didn't find it, and I don't think that it exists. I don't think they're there to get rich, but I do think that you have to say these people who are so powerful, who are implementing these incredibly important policies, who really failed to change the direction that things have been going in Haiti leading up to the earthquake and then continue going in after. I think you have to hold them in some way responsible for that, even if it's just sitting here with a microphone in a room with hors d'oeuvres and saying, boy, I don't think they did the best job possible.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda. I work at the Pulitzer Center also. I think we had one more question here. Do you have a question? You didn't? Who did?
I did.
You did? Okay.
Hi, thank you. This is really interesting. I guess maybe I should end on a more positive note. What do you feel can be done now going forward, either by the Clintons or by the development community as a whole?
I've answered every question. Do you want to answer this? Or do you
I
want
think you're better at this than me.
I think, and maybe this is a classic journalist answer, but I think that the number one most important thing that can change is the introduction of accountability. At this moment in the aid industry, you can really do whatever you want, and whatever the results are, it doesn't really matter. You're going to get funded again. The only thing that you can do as a humanitarian NGO to go out of business is to either manage your own money so poorly that you just go out of business and you can't exist anymore, or to so screw up your reporting to a funding agency like ECHO or USAID that they won't give you money anymore. Other than that, you can literally kill people. You can, the UN, again, you can literally kill people. There are so many examples going through the years in Haiti where these interventions, the famous Creole Pig Massacre, right, in the late 1970s and the early 1980s, where people have implemented programs that have destroyed people's ability to feed themselves, have ruined people's lives, or at the very least taken a whole lot of money and done absolutely nothing with it, and it doesn't matter. No one cares. And part of the reason why no one cares, frankly, is because the expectations couldn't be lower. When you talk about Haiti, when you talk about a lot of developing countries, people basically just assume, look, these are basket cases. This is a fucked up place. And it was screwed up before, and it's going to continue being screwed up now. And so there's no expectation that anything's ever going to get better. And I think part of the way that you can change that is by not having that conversation anymore in generalities, but having it very specifically. What are you trying to do? What are your goals? How do we know if you've lived up to those goals? If you haven't lived up to those goals, what do we get to do to you? And if you do something really bad, if you do something absolutely criminal, because the Clintons aren't doing it, but like there are places that are very for profit and they pocket money and people make very nice salaries and they go home at the end of the day. Like if you've really been doing something wrong, if you've really been doing something corrupt, if you've killed people, if you've introduced a disease, whatever it is, then like how can you actually be held accountable? And that's not happening today. And I think that if that changed, it would force a lot of other things to change with it. It wouldn't be a panacea because the real problem are the power relationships and the fact that you have vulnerable countries like Haiti and you have powerful countries that have all the stuff. They're just going there and acting in them to start out with. But at the very least, they actually had to answer to somebody for what they did. I think that would be valuable. And again, I think that's one of the things that as journalists we can sort of do, although we're often, pissing the wind. But one of the things that we can do is try to talk openly and honestly about what hasn't been done and what has failed, and what the real situation is, so that wiser people than we are, who actually work on this stuff, who, by the way, actually live in these countries and actually know what their lives are and actually know what they need, can take the leadership and come up with better solutions in the future.
It's hard to end this conversation on any note, but I think that's as good as any to adjourn outside. Thank you all so much for coming. You can check out more of their reporting on our website, pulitzercenter.org, if you're interested. Many thanks to Allison and Jonathan for coming tonight, and thanks to all of you.